Jazmine fights back the tears threatening to break through the corners of her eyes as she desperately tries to ignore her captor's voice. After her first attempt to escape, he had opted to gag her as well to keep her from screaming. Earlier that morning, another version of Steiner Optics, donning the suit of his stand, had appeared in the room she had been locked in to meet with the optics of what she assumed was the present timeline. He had approached her with a rag, and the next thing she knew, she was awake in a more barren room than before, with the alternate optics sitting calmly in a chair watching her.
I wish you would trust me, Jazz.
He grumbled softly, just barely cutting through the white noise of the never-ending shower, and Jazmine groans in an effort to drown him out again.
We've been together for so long. If you just calmed down and listened, I know you'd understand.
He had been going on like this ever since she had reawoken. While she was certain it was all nonsense, her confidence was beginning to wane. The details he regaled of her life were far more accurate than that of a simple stalker, and each new detail he shared seemed to bring about some long-forgotten memory from her past.
I hate that I have to keep you here like this. Jack would never forgive me. That was such a hard time for you. Marigold was so heartbroken. You'd never seen your grandmother so sad before.
He continues, and the tears Jazmine had been holding back could be held no more.
Please.
She begs internally, wishing he could somehow read her mind.
Stop.
How could he possibly have known her grandparents with such certainty? He couldn't be much older than herself.
I remember the funeral. The little black dress that your mother had bought for you. But you insisted on wearing that blue ribbon in your hair because it was Jack's favorite color. It was the first time Marigold smiled since he'd passed, and you held her hand the whole time. Not once did you leave her side.
She couldn't drown him out anymore. The memory of her grandfather's funeral was one buried into her mind, and she was there all over again, holding her grandmother's hand as stranger upon stranger offered their condolences. She tries to remember their faces, but none come to mind, except for one, a gaunt, dark-haired young man with a wide mouth and an uneasy, toothy smile.
Optics.
He had been there.
No! No, it couldn't be. Could he?
The memory becomes clearer as she frantically tries to prove it wrong. Optics shook her grandmother's hand, apologized for her loss, and then...
His heart was just too big, she said. The old fool just couldn't keep up.
Jazmine tosses back her head in defeat, tears streaming down her face as her resolve is shattered. What could she even trust anymore if not her mind? Where could she go if not the refuge of her memories? At every turn, every corner, Steiner Optics is there, trapping her in this room and invading her past. Suddenly, a scream breaks through the walls, silencing the droning sound of Optics' voice. The scream, though terrifying in its own right, is unmistakable to Jazmine's ears. Her heart skips a beat as her first real glimpse of hope overcomes her.
Mina!
Recognizing the expression in her eyes, Optics' own bores into her, and he leans forward, weaving his long fingers together into a cradle upon which to rest his chin.
Trusting them is dangerous, Jazz. They don't care about you. Not like I do.
The Livewire Motel contains a total of 28 rooms, arranged in an L-shaped building with 2 stories and a flight of stairs on either end. In any one of those rooms, Jazmine could be waiting for her rescuers. However, with a myriad of iterations of her slippery kidnapper concealed throughout, the odds were not in their favor. Armed with Soulful Strut stickers, Alexa, Weston, Sunny, and Eloise decided best to split apart to cover more ground. Surely, if they spread themselves evenly across the possibilities ahead of them, one of them should land close enough. At least, one would hope. Without speaking a word, each member of the rescue team makes their decision and takes flight. Alexa bolts for a room on the bottom level, thinking to herself.
Mina and Theo should have cleared most of the rooms in the top half of this section.
Throwing a sticker on the door to room 102, she finds it open upon request. Within is an eerie silence, not unlike what they were left with after the many versions of Optics slithered away and into the motel. The stillness was perhaps more frightening than their encounter with the kidnapper. Alexa breaks the silence with a whispered,
Private eyes.
and the two satellites scan the area for clues. At the far corner is a locked bathroom door, lit up like a Christmas tree from the amount of heat emanating within to Private Eyes' UV sensors. Not overlooking her immediate surroundings, Alexa also spies a strange letter placed on the dresser.
To my wife and child, I'm sorry. It's no excuse, but I was too drunk to know what I was doing.
She reads. The handwriting is unfamiliar, though the details written on its page go on to suggest that the man was someone of high standing.
I didn't remember what happened that night, but I remember now. That strange man showed me proof of my shame.
By all accounts, the letter reads as a suicide note.
Optics again.
Alexa wonders.
But how?
Cautiously approaching the bathroom door, she is unsure of what lies beyond. However, with resolve to find and recover Jazmine, Alexa does not hesitate. When she rips open the door, she is met with a portly man in nothing but boxer shorts, within a still running and overflowing bathtub. He doesn't even flinch, and Alexa quickly realizes why. Sharing the tub with him is an iron, plugged into the nearby wall outlet. He'd been lying dead in this bathtub for what must have been hours. With little time to question or process what morbid nonsense she walked into, Alexa feels the heel of a boot on her back as she is kicked into the electrified tub. She succeeds in stopping herself short of instant death, but an avatar of Optics, dressed in Dreamweaver's skin-tight leather uniform, slithers behind Alexa and presses its foot against her back.
You had your chance.
Optics condemns, pushing her down with all of his strength.
And now it's time for you to share his fate.
The Russian agent struggles as she inches closer to the water. Fortuitously, a photograph she had hidden away slowly slides from her pocket. Another gift from Weston Archer, a Polaroid of a block of dry ice. As the picture lands in the water, a thick cloud of white erupts and smothers the bathroom in a bubbling fog. Disarmed, Optics doubles back, coughing as the murk fills his lungs. When he swipes the fog away, Alexa is nowhere to be seen, vanished from his sight.
Damn! Where did you go?
He swears while spinning his head around in search of Alexa. Ultimately, he discovers her far too late. Hiding atop the ceiling, carried there by Private Eyes, Alexa drops down to Optics with a kick. Her own boot makes contact with his face, the force of which was so hard that the entity before her vanished as if a stand returning to its owner. Though she reigned victorious, Alexa knew better than to celebrate so early. Reaching to the sticker on the lapel of her coat, Alexa prepares to relay this information to her comrades when Sunny's voice crackles through. In another corner of the motel, Sunny finds herself stepping in a pool of blood. An unconscious Mina bleeds out from a head wound, and Theodore, the only one who could save her, is rendered into fabric and equally unresponsive. Sunny sobs, not knowing what to do as she cries to her companions.
Theo's turned into a blanket and Mina's bleeding! I tried to put a sticker on her head and tell her to stop, but it won't stop! She's gonna die! What should I do?
A sardonic, annoyed voice quips back from the sticker Sunny was using as a walkie-talkie. It is unmistakably Eloise.
Sensory sticker on Theodore. Have you tried that at least? No!
Sunny whimpers. Soulful Strut manifests and places a sticker onto the fabric man, and the smiley face expression suddenly changes to one of surprise. Suddenly, as if awaking from a dream of falling, the transformed seamster's eyes snap open with conviction. Sharp-dressed man appears and reverts its master's transformed state, rendering Theodore back to flesh and blood. He grumbles as he pushes himself upright and is instantly met with the shrill weeping of Sunny.
Can you please turn the volume down a smidge, dear?
He bemoans with a headache.
But Theo, Mina's hurt! You've gotta do something to...
Sunny's protestation is met with a touch of sharp-dressed man, and she finds her mouth instantly sewn shut. Theo holds up a finger as he uses the other to rub his tired eyes.
How about this, Sonny? If I undo the stitches, will you promise to be a little more quiet?
With tears in her eyes, Sunny nods. she mumbles through a closed mouth. After a moment of pause, Theo retorts, "I don't believe you." Nevertheless, he knows exactly what he must do, and cracks his knuckles before approaching his friend's brutalized body and kneeling down before her. With a twinge of anguish, he rubs Mina's wounded head. "You'll be just fine, Mina." Eloise stands in the center of an unremarkable room. Door after door explored by her companions has thus far proven to be without fruition. Her own investigations, she assumed, would also bear little consequence. Despite her pessimism, Eloise was thorough. She places an ear to each of the walls in an attempt to mark off even more rooms that Jazmine could not possibly be held within. However, one element of this particular suite struck her curiosity more than any other. Sat plainly upon a desk, a locked safe taunted her. Just then, a crackle came through the sticker placed on her chest.
Everyone!
A small voice squeaks. Theo can be heard trying to persuade Mina to save her strength, but the resolute secretary presses through the pain.
I need everyone to know. When I tried to retrieve Optics' memory of where he's keeping Jazmine, he didn't have one. I think these other versions of him have to know where Jazz is, but for some reason the Optics we know doesn't.
What could that mean?
Eloise retorts. Her attention, once again, returns to the lockbox.
A secret plan kept away from the real Optics. Shared only by these squishy bondage monsters?
Surely it couldn't be that simple. A plan hidden away in a vault, the true location of Jazmine kept under lock. As Eloise approaches the last remaining corner of the room she had yet to investigate, she incredulously places a hand upon the iron box.
It can't be.
She scoffs. But before she backs away, Eloise's hand graces an unusual texture. She doubles back, but it doesn't seem as though Optics is present.
Merde.
She curses.
Should have used these stickers.
Eloise examines the safe more carefully this time, and finds no trace of her adversary. Was it perhaps her imagination? Eloise convinces herself that it was simply an act of her paranoia. She proceeds to place a sticker on the suspicious strongbox, commanding it to reveal its secrets to her.
The number of your combination?
Eloise asks.
Tell me.
Happy to.
The sticker responds.
It's 36, 10, 59, then 97.
Eloise cocks a smug grin for but a moment.
Thank you, Cherie.
She whispers to the smiling face while thinking of her newfound companion. Turning the dial as instructed, Eloise lands on the final number. But as she pulls at the handle, it remains sealed shut. Grumbling, Eloise snaps at the uncooperative safe with an accusatory.
What is the meaning of this? Are you trying to make a fool of me?
In response, it stutters back in confusion.
I don't know. That should be the code. Oh dear, I'm sorry. I don't know what's wrong. It's what he said when he turned my dial.
How can the memory of an inanimate object be confused?
Eloise wonders in frustration. Ultimately, facing such a roadblock only made her more bold.
Going so far to hide this from me. I must be on the right track.
Summoning Witchy Woman, Eloise forgoes all caution in order to uncover the secret of this vault.
I'm going to find out what is inside of you no matter what kind of tricks you try to pull, Optics.
Scores of summer dreams fly from Eloise's hat, each one attempting every possible permutation of the safe's combination. Ultimately, Witchy Woman allows Eloise to inhabit the reality of only one of these phantasms, and so she chooses the one who succeeded in finding the correct code.
There we are.
Eloise exclaims as she opens the strongbox in victory, but within isn't something Optics was trying to hide from her. In fact, it was nothing but bait. Not a clue to Jazmine's location, but instead a colony of angry bees. The furious insects belch from within the safe and strike at Eloise with their stingers. She is pierced a dozen times over by the vengeful bees while attempting to escape their wrath. The Gothic model flees to the door from whence she came, but a monstrous version of Optics squeezes himself through the crack underneath, blocking her path. She has only one option, the nearby closet. Eloise takes hold of Witchy Woman and throws it into the open door of the wardrobe, walling herself within.
You developed a pretty severe allergy to bee stings when you were a teenager, didn't you?
A muffled voice chuckles from outside Eloise's hiding place.
Crawl in there all you want. You won't last a minute without treatment.
Eloise finds his confidence puzzling. Something about that statement was awfully suspicious, and after pondering for a moment, she realizes why.
You must have learned that when I touched his stand. But that was a different Eloise.
Eloise touches the brim of Witchy Woman. prepared to return to the version of herself in question to search her memories, but pauses to consider that in doing so, she will be putting herself at risk. An Eloise trapped in her current hiding place would have to be one attacked by the swarm, and assuming that her opponent isn't bluffing, the danger of anaphylactic shock was likely imminent. On her last skull, Eloise would have to choose between testing her theory of Optics' abilities and her own safety. With an irritated sigh, the morose model drops Witchy Woman on the head of the Eloise that had previously touched Dreamweaver. Searching her memories, she finds what she was looking for. A vague recollection of Optics. He was there in her past. The one who disturbed the hive, both back then and now. Suddenly, Optics uses his squid-like body to wriggle his way into her closet, peeking through underneath the crack. His words, full of malice, drip from a snake-like tongue.
Of course, that still won't be enough to kill you, will it, Eloise?
Rather than being met with horrified prey, Optics finds her at the ready with a broken closet rod. She thrusts its pointed end down upon his skull. Quickly, the monster scurries away. Eloise uses the pole to brace the door shut and stuffs a towel underneath to seal the crack. As she taps the sticker to communicate this newfound information with her companions, Optics throws himself repeatedly at the door to force his way in.
I figured out how he stand drugs.
Eloise exclaims in confidence as her throat begins to swell and tighten around her voice. Weston Archer, almost as timid as the mousy secretary, overhears the commotion through Soulful Strut's stickers. He hesitates, but selects a rather conspicuous room to investigate. On the outside, the windows are completely boarded up with planks, allowing not a crack of light to spill on the inside. Weston quickly discovers himself blanketed in darkness as soon as the door closes behind him. Walking to the center of the room, he tumbles over something wet in his direct path, but manages to stay upright. He tugs on the pull chain to turn on the light, but it appears to have been burnt out long ago.
Great.
He sighs, digging into a portable photo album slung around his shoulder by a strap. Cracking open the book, a dim red glow shines from within.
Glad I didn't give this one away, at least.
Weston takes out a photograph of an illuminated light bulb within his darkroom. The picture emanates some measure of light due to his stand's ability, bathing the room in a deep crimson hue. Affixing it to the broken light bulb, it casts a dim radiance across the space, much like a candle's flame. However, it was simply not strong enough to illuminate his surroundings.
I wonder.
He scratches his chin while retrieving one of Sunny's stickers. Placing it on the backside of his photograph, he gives the Polaroid a command.
Burn brighter.
Surprisingly, this experiment proved fruitful. The photograph grew brighter and brighter until he could clearly see every corner of the room he was in. Then, over the intercom of Soulful Strut's stickers, a revelation fills Weston with dread. Eloise hurriedly begins describing Dreamweaver's ability as she finally puts all of the clues together.
When a scan touches you, it sends a version of itself into your memories. If the memory is uncertain, Optics can slip his way inside and change it. Any corner of your mind that's hazy can become a portal for him, and the changes he makes become reality.
Knowing this, Weston realizes that any corner of the room he's standing in can be altered, for until this very moment, he never got a good look at it. Whipping his head back, his fears are confirmed. The door from whence he entered was completely sealed shut.
Damn.
He curses. However, armed with his Polaroid camera and enough light to see, Weston comes up with a solution. He begins taking pictures of the room. The photographs develop in painstaking minutes, but caution was of the utmost concern. Going through nearly an entire stock of blank photos, Weston believes he's cleared this hurdle and stares at a handful of Polaroids that map out the entire room. There can be no doubting his memories with such evidence before him.
A royal flush.
He smirks. Just then, a muffled but vaguely recognizable voice comes through the door connecting this motel room to the next.
I know.
It speaks.
It's been so much for you lately. But I really want you to remember, Jazz.
On the other side of the door, Jazmine lies helplessly in the bed, too exhausted from fighting her restraints to do much more than focus on her breathing. The Stygian iteration of Optics has moved to sit next to her, placing a cool cloth to her forehead.
I'm here to keep an eye out for you. Always. just like I promised you during your 3 days' grace.
Jazmine recoils under the contact, but Optics merely continues to wipe her brow of its accumulating sweat.
And at Tom's diner, with Calvin. Don't you remember? That's when I caught him in his lie. And when I smelled gunpowder in Mickey Finn's toy gun and pulled you away just in time.
She lets out a dull moan in an effort to deny Optics' recounting of events. But the spirit of her previous refutations has all but left her. Optics smiles, cupping his hand to her cheek to meet her eyes.
You've overcome so much in such a short amount of time. Being abandoned like that by the CIA, by your partner, and then the burn notice and all the attempts on your life. All I want is to help you, Jazz. To make sure you're never alone again.
He's trying to change her past? Weston realizes with a gasp. In an effort to listen closer to the conversation and discern what is going on, the photographer crosses the room when a sound from underneath the bed catches his attention. The one place he had failed to photograph. A thin, nearly invisible tripwire lies triggered underneath his foot, connecting to a shotgun that had been hidden away from his view and the eye of his camera lens. The tall man quickly steps back and out of the way, dodging the spray of bullets just before it fires and splinters the door he had been approaching. From behind, purple tentacles wrap around Weston's neck and drag him to the floor and into the bathroom. His head smashed against the porcelain, he is met with the bulging eyes of Optics inhabiting Dreamweaver's gelatinous body as the mad kidnapper squirms from the toilet drain.
What was that you said before? A royal flush.
Just then, another voice breaks through the sticker on Weston's vest. Alexa declares,
Everyone, I know how he's keeping limelight at bay. The water. He's filling the rooms with steam to refract her light. If we can just cut the main water line, Jazmine will be able to use limelight to escape.
Weston smirks as he catches the look of panic on Optics' face. The squid-like man quickly exits back down the drain, giving the photographer one final blow to the skull on the ceramic throne. Alexa stands atop Optics' van once again, focusing on maintaining her novel third eye to scan the entire motel thoroughly. But none of the information she receives from all three private eyes makes any sense.
At this point, we've checked at least half of the rooms, but almost all of them have been empty of life. Yet the heat readings from private eyes are off the charts. Why would that be?
As she stands there in ponderance, she glances back to the first room she had entered, and a thought crosses her mind.
That body had been dead for some time. So was it the heat of the bath I detected?
In an instant, an epiphany strikes her.
A hot shower!
Alexa exclaims out loud, her eyes now fixated on the plumbing of the entire motel. Sure enough, water was flowing non-stop into nearly every single room, and flooding them with steam to disrupt Private Eyes' scanning attempts.
Everyone! I know how he's keeping limelight at bay. The water! He's filling the rooms with steam to refract her light. If we can just cut the main water line, Jazmine will be able to use limelight to escape.
Cutting, you say? Sounds like you could use my assistance.
Theo replies, and Alexa smiles at his enthusiasm. Within Optics' room, Mina sits with Sunny on the ground as she continues to recover from her newly repaired head wound.
You girls stay here and avoid getting caught by that oversized calamari. I'll be back in a jiff.
Sunny stands up abruptly and follows Theo toward the door.
Wait! We haven't heard from Elo since she told us about the stand. I'm getting worried.
Before Theo can argue, Mina joins Sunny and says,
I'll go with you. At this point, there's safety in numbers.
Theo, hurry! He's in the pipes!
Alexa shouts, and he frowns at the girls before shaking his head to himself and running off.
You'd best be careful.
He warns, darting in the direction of the nearby private eye, guiding him toward the water main. Sunny and Mina exchange looks of determination and prepare to run and find Eloise when another door swings open. Stretching out her arm and standing protectively in front of the smaller girl, Sunny instinctively prepares to stand off with whatever it is that they are about to encounter when out stumbles an almost unrecognizable face, swollen, red, and struggling to breathe.
Hello?
Sunny gasps, realizing that atop the usually pale woman's head is a witchy woman barren of its skulls. Eloise throws her starving stand toward the ground at Sunny and Mina's feet, and the disgusting squelching of blood and bones being devoured startles them both. Collapsing to her knees in relief as Witchy Woman returns to her with its replenished skulls, Eloise switches back to a healthy state and takes a deep breath.
That was close.
She sighs, Sunny runs to help Eloise up, grateful to see her companion back to normal.
You look like a red balloon! What was that, Elo?
However, Mina's eyes remain on the ground where Witchy Woman had eaten whatever creature had scurried from underneath the bathroom door.
Sunny, you didn't try and use that morphine when I was knocked out, did you? Ew, what? No, I hate needles!
Sunny squirms at the mere thought of touching the drug, let alone using it.
Why would you ask that?
Mina steps over to pick up an empty syrette, squeezed dry like used-up toothpaste. Revealing it to her comrades, her heart beats so profoundly in her chest, it feels like it's trying to escape via her throat.
Because this tube was completely untouched when I was in here earlier.
Sunny and Eloise cautiously approach the threshold with Mina when a weak moan from the bathroom catches their attention. The three women look to each other before looking back at the door that had all but been ignored up until now. Emboldened by the companionship, Sunny steps forward and reaches for the knob, only to get slapped away with a tentacle as it locks the handle in place.
It gets like this when you're onto something, Charlie.
Oh, I'm onto something, all right.
Sunny says, a determined look in her eye. Soulful Strut appears and smacks a sticker square in the middle of the door, and she commands.
Smash his stupid hand and open up! Okie dokie!
Squeaks the door as it opens and closes with a slam, crushing the tentacle into the wooden jamb. The entry to the bathroom then swings back wide open, and the first thing they notice is a parade of rats scurrying underneath their feet, flushed out by optics using the pipes to travel. Left behind in the room is a recognizable figure sprawled out within the tub. Addled and unresponsive, the real Steiner Optics lies with an empty syrette of the aforementioned morphine still stuck in his arm. But there was one more surprise waiting for them. Knocking the girls out of the way, the version of Optics that had been guarding his vulnerable present self lurches forward to pick up the man in the bath.
The morphine! They're using this version of himself to travel into his past.
Eloise surmises as he barrels out the window of the room, with his other self in tow. Jazmine's eyes grow heavy with exhaustion. The droning of Optics' voice narrating the story of her life up to this point, and the sound of the incessant shower weighing her down to the bed. Her memories have become vague and muddled, and even the voice she had recognized earlier was beginning to slip from her mind. Mandy, Mary, who could be sure she even knew the woman who had screamed outside this room. Worst of all, every face she had once remembered fondly was fading right before her eyes, replaced with the hazy but increasingly clear image of the man beside her bed.
You're starting to remember, right, Jazz?
Optics whispers in her ear.
All the times that I've been there looking out for you, watching you. It wasn't just the marigolds. It was everything. After all, I only have eyes for you.
Eyes.
A voice in Jazmine's head repeats. She recalls an image of a tall figure with long, dark hair, but the figure doesn't seem to come into focus despite her best efforts.
What color were her eyes?
Just stay with me, Jazz, and I promise I'll protect you from everyone. And the Squarebiz killer.
But Optics' confidence is cut short by the sudden explosive silence of the shower sputtering off.
What?
The ventilation within the bathroom kicks on, and the steam quickly begins to disperse, leaving the leather-clad Optics in a blind panic. He rushes to the bucket of water he'd been keeping nearby, but he simply cannot outrun the speed of light. Jazmine rises from the bed, free from her bindings and perfectly dry thanks to the reappearance of limelight and its manipulation of microwave radiation. Before Optics could return his glance, she was gone. In his haste, the water from his emergency bucket splashes out of its container, forming a light-bending barrier through which a transformed Jazmine can attack. As soon as her rainbow fist passes through, it becomes corporeal once more. Without a microsecond to blink, the version of Optics that had been keeping her prisoner is launched through the facade of the building. It dissipates in the explosion of wood and plaster. Stepping over the debris of her newly created portal to freedom, Jazmine stands with renewed vigor, smoldering down at the scene below in righteous indignation. Alexa runs from the corner of the building at the sound of the explosion, having used Soulful Strut's stickers to force on the ventilation in every room of the motel. A version of Optics in the suit of his stand attempts to carry his weak and present self to safety from some looming presence. Sure enough, When she looks up toward the settling debris, the blonde angel of vengeance flies like a lightning bolt to smite the scurrying worm. The future version of Optics is blown away in an instant by Jazmine's fists as she makes contact with the scattered glass of a shattered window. What's left behind is the pitiful, writhing body of a morphine-addled scarecrow of a man. Optics can barely open his eyes, twitching in the glass debris as other iterations of himself donning Dreamweaver's suit coalesce upon Jazmine.
Don't bother touching him.
One of them warns, inching closer to its object of affection.
Even if you lay a hand on him, we won't disappear.
Vroom. Vroom.
The voice of Private Eyes resounds with clarity. With one hand, Jazmine picks up the sedated Optics lying on the ground, and with the other, she rips off the button to her outfit and tosses it in the air to Limelight, which catches the coin and bursts it into light.
Alexa!
No other words were needed. All eyes that fell upon Jazmine were forced shut from the intensity of Limelight's flashbang, the one moment she needed to begin her assault. Private Eyes flickers its camera, and Limelight's fists burst before her as a continuous fury, connecting with Optics' face as Jazmine's physical form returns with every shudder in a relentless assault. The sheer pain inflicted upon Optics overrides the morphine in his system, and as her fury wakes him from his stupor, each one of his leathery likenesses vanish with each punch. Now that he is entirely aware of his predicament, no one can save Optics from the punishment he has earned, least of all himself. The last of his guardians vanish, but Jazmine does not relent. Thoroughly beaten and bleeding in a heap on the ground, Steiner Optics is no longer able to move. He can't even twitch his lips to whimper in pain. Jazmine crouches down and grabs him by the collar, glaring directly in his eyes.
I'll give you credit, Steiner. You accomplished one thing for sure. I will never forget your face.
She seethes. The bloodshot anger boiling behind her gaze is seared into his soul, as the only thing he's capable of at this very moment is to simply watch.
And if I ever see it again, I will kill you.
Her threat made, Jazmine pulls back one fist to land a final sucker punch directly into his nose and knocks him unconscious before dropping him back into the bloody puddle at her feet. Her chest heaving as the adrenaline slowly starts to fade from her body, Jazmine feels her knees give out beneath her, but she remains upright as she falls forward into the arms of a tall but welcoming figure. Alexa embraces Jazmine with a tender hug just before she succumbs to gravity, desperately holding on to the returning memories of all she'd been through by Alexa's side. Jazmine looks up to the face that had started to fade from her mind, and she is met with the answer to her question from before.
Blue.
She mutters aloud.
Your eyes are blue.
A gentle hand pulls her out of old recollections to create something entirely new, and soft lips meet her own in a caress that briefly stops her heart. Alexa kisses Jazmine long and deep, saying all of the unspoken words between them in one simple gesture. When she pulls back, both women look to each other to reveal the tears that had begun to fall, and a quiet laugh escapes Alexa at the look of shock on Jazmine's face.
Wow.
She gasps.
You missed me that much.
Alexa chuckles, wiping the tears from Jazmine's cheeks.
More.
She assures, and she presses her forehead against the blonde's brow.
So much more.
I must say, it's about time you two sealed the deal. The tension in the air was absolutely killing me.
A voice perks up beside them, and Jazmine turns to see Theo beaming delightedly.
Welcome back, Jazmine.
Next to Theo stands Mina, who removes her glasses to wipe away the dampness of her own eyes and nods in agreement.
Mina!
Jazmine exclaims as the girl's name returns to her.
You're okay. I heard you scream.
Mina laughs sheepishly.
Theo patched me up. Don't worry. I'm just happy to see you again.
Alexa squeezes Jazmine tight once more, reassuring her of the truth when, suddenly, another set of arms tackle her from behind.
I can't take it anymore! Quit hogging Jazz all to yourself, Lexi!
An unexpected voice shouts. She looks over her shoulder at the smiling face of Sunny, who hugs her tight.
Sonny? What?
A cooler voice interrupts with a sigh as another unexpected body comes into view. Eloise looks down at Jazmine, hunching underneath the weight of Sunny, and chastises.
You've certainly lived up to your first impression. You, Jazmine, are a problem.
And Eloise? What?
Jazmine turns to Alexa in search of an answer, but instead, she just receives a somewhat embarrassed smile.
It's a lot. I can explain later. A thank you would be nice.
Eloise remarks, rolling her eyes, and Sunny releases Jazmine to smack the dour woman in the arm.
Behave, Elo! Jazz has been through a lot, and besides, we didn't do this for ourselves.
Rubbing her arm from where Sunny had hit her, Eloise glares at the younger model.
Speak for yourself, chérie.
I guess they're always going to be like that.
Another voice speaks up, startling Jazmine the most.
Weston! You're alive! But you were shot.
Yes, well, let's say the bullet didn't take.
He laughs lightly, his hand covering a bloody and bruised skull as he approaches the team.
Really? Another head wound? My word.
Theo sighs, walking toward their tall and lanky photographer.
I'm sure this is a lot to take in right now, so let's not get too caught up in the details.
Weston continues in an effort to reassure the still-shaken starlet. Alexa reaches back for Jazmine, clasping her hand and drawing her into her side once more.
What's important is that you're safe. And it wouldn't have happened without all of Maison.
She admits. Surrounded by her companions, both new and old, Jazmine feels herself overcome with gratitude as tears spill once more from her eyes. For as long as she could remember, she had spent her life running away. Although growing up with a roof over her head, no place truly felt secure. Nowhere was safe from his eyes. And so she remained ever on the move, searching desperately for a place of safety and comfort. Now, for the first time, in the arms of someone she loved and the company of friends, Jazmine has found a place that she could finally call home. Alexa watches as the police on the scene apprehend and handcuff Optics, while Jazmine sits on the edge of the ambulance answering a handful of questions the detectives have for what transpired at the Livewire motel. The story they'd agreed on was simple. Jazmine managed to call Alexa and tell her where she was while her stalker and kidnapper, Optics, an unhinged superfan, had been in the shower, and Alexa had shown up to break her out. Optics snapped, and the two women used everything they could to beat him down while the maid, Mina, called the police. Theo had done a surprisingly eloquent job of staging the scene in under 20 minutes, and Weston, Sunny, and Eloise acted as believable witnesses to the entire ordeal. As Optics is read his rights and shoved into the back of a police car, a rolled-up newspaper falls from his coveralls and to the ground. The cops don't appear to notice, too caught up in the glory of having arrested the kidnapper to a budding Maison model. So Alexa approaches the curiosity and unfolds its contents for herself. Her heart sinks as she reads the headline, putting yet another piece of the puzzle into place. In 1 month, Jazmine would become yet another victim of the Square Biz killer.